Namaste, and Sri Sriji, thank you for your presence and a wonderful talk by our friend Naveen Jain before. And thanks to the overseas volunteers for Better India to put this together and for all the wonderful work they're doing. And I really wish all of us to really help them out because they're young, dynamic, and we need more people to join them. I'd like to talk a little bit, just spend a few minutes on the idea that better India has to be a Dharmic India. It is not an India of material outward prosperity only. India traditionally has been extremely prosperous. There is no doubt about that. India was one of the most wealthy countries. In fact, until the 1800s, India and China had 2/3 of the world GDP. This is acknowledged by Western economists, history of economy. That China and India had 2/3 of the world economy, and what is now called the West was less than 20% at that time. So we've declined in recent centuries. Previously, we were knowledge producers, technology producers, R&D hubs, exporters, and this is well established throughout Asia, China, Japan, those kind of places. But also towards the Middle East, there was a lot of Indian influence. So there is a certain asset value we have in our core civilization, and somehow there has been a huge disruption in history which has kind of devastated us. Even today, India, if it did not have corruption, and if the few $1 or $2 trillion or whatever has been going out were not the case, India would not be as poor a country. India would not be a poor country by the standards of a lot of economists if it weren't for the corruption. So what I'm trying to say is that Dharma and the inner being not being clean, the Dharma being compromised, and the inner infrastructure not being proper for individuals causes all these problems. Because the individual is the building block of the nation. The nation is not out based on just we got roads and highways and airports. It's after all people. And the individual caliber of the human being is what counts. If this individual caliber is corrupt, and the individual is tainted, and the individual is obsessively chasing the wrong things, and living a non-sustainable lifestyle, living a lifestyle where there's abuse of women, or one community is upset and fighting another community, this kind of an individual is not a healthy building block for a rashtra, which is what a nation is. So there are two things to this. One is the building of the individual as a building block. And this is where Sri Sriji and Art of Living are doing a lot to create the inner infrastructure, making the better person out of you, making a better individual. So these better individuals as a building block can then become a better nation. Then there is the top-down also, a better governance, better political leaders, cleaner, better institutions are necessary for the next generation of individuals to be nurtured. So individuals influence the nation, and the nation, through its education system, through its policies, through its media, through its values, it nurtures the next generation of children that are being raised. So the individual and the nation are mutually symbiotic. They're mutually dependent. And to build a better India, you have to look at both sides. You have to look at the individual side, and you have to look at also the collective side. Now, this idea of dharma is a very old idea, but it's not frozen in time. It is not a fixed thing. It keeps changing with the times, and we have to change it again for today. The dharma in Ramayana is not the same way it's applied in Mahabharata. The arguments, the logic, the circumstances, the situations are different, and hence the teachings are different according to the times. So we have to reapply the dharma for today. The Adi Shankara, a great revolutionary who takes the dharma from the Vedic times and puts it for his context, his situation. What does he do? We must understand what Adi Shankara achieved, because we have to redo it for today. Adi Shankara does Purva Paksha of the opponents at that time. They were Buddhists at the time. Today it's not Buddhists. Today it's traditions that started in the Middle East. That is what we are up against. And Marxism and corruption and those kind of things. So he takes on the opposing points of view he does Purva Paksha on them. He doesn't say, I'm the same. He does not go to, we are all same. It's a very strong critique of what must be rejected according to his point of view. So today we have to do Purva Paksha of various ideologies, points of view, philosophies, worldviews that pervade in order to re-establish where we are coming from. Second thing he does is he unites the various streams of Dharma within. He unites Shaivism, Vaishnavism, and Shakta, the Devi tradition. In fact, in the Sringeri Mutt, the deity is goddess. So he puts all these things together, which is similar to putting all the different segments and fragments of our Rashtra and our Sampradayas together, united in a certain way. And based on this grounding and this foundation, he creates institutions, the matthas. In today's terminology, the matthas that he started would be called think tanks. They're think tanks. They're really they are the centers of learning, of R&D, of understanding our civilization, of propagating that. So we need these mechanisms in place so rather than depending on Ford Foundation to be giving grants and understanding Indian thought and Indian politics and Indian society and deciding what viewpoint is correct, what viewpoint is not correct, and sort of nurturing the scholars of India, which is what is happening. And many other foundations from other places are coming and influencing in India. We need Indian philanthropists, Indian very rich people, to create the Indian equivalents, the Dharmic equivalents of such foundations, so that they become the think tanks, they are the new matthas. This is what we need to do. Now, as far as collective nation projects are concerned, I think one of the specific proposals I would make is that there should be a national service mandatory for youth. A young person who is at the college age should devote a year of their life to some national service before being given an undergraduate degree. And they should be able to choose. This is the mother that gave birth to you, the civilization, gave you your values, gave you so much wealth that you have to return. And by doing that, you become patriotic, your character will be better. So you could choose military, you could choose going and working in a hospital in a village, running a village school somewhere. But there should be an approved list of NGOs that are patriotic. And I would reject the ones that are funded and controlled by a foreign nexus, like some of these evangelists and so on. They should be sort of not part of this system because they're bringing ideas that are not necessarily for our Rashtra. So youth should be organized, and it should become a policy. It should become a kind of a national ethos and a pride. Many countries have a year of national service required of young people, and I'm surprised that we haven't done that. I would also like to propose that since OVBI is doing this voting registration, I hope they are successful, and I hope we can get a strong government with an absolute majority and not a fragmented government, a coalition which is wobbly, which is full of opportunism, which is full of lots of little people who have to be satisfied and which is therefore going to be corrupt, but a strong leadership which can then unite the country under that banner and take us forward. I would like to see that happen. And if possible, a constitutional reformation would be required to create a presidential system. The parliamentary system, which is copying the British system, assumes a small country. Britain is a small country. So you can have a lot of fragmented vote banks here and there, but after all, it's a small country, they can come together. But when you have such a huge nation and so much diversity, having lots of little pockets, there's over 100 parties, all kind of parties, and more coming. So what is happening is that the number of parties you have to put together in some kind of a wobbly committee to form a government, the number of parties is going up every time. It's no longer 5 parties, it's no longer 10 parties, you need like lots of parties. and then everybody's got a demand, everybody wants a position in some ministry because they will get bribes out of it. So the way the government is running is that I create a vote bank with some minority, some group of people. I tell them that I will protect you because everybody else hates you. You should hate them. It creates an animosity between this group and the rest of the country. I am your protector. Vote for me and I will help you. And then when they vote for me, I get a number of seats. And then I negotiate with the coalition that if you want me involved in the coalition, then you have to give me this, that privilege, because then I can make corrupt money out of it. So it's a proposition which says fragment the country more and more to capture little bits of power, and then these little bits of power are assembled to make big power, which have no principles, no dharmic ethics, just opportunism. People come together if they can make a government, and then all of them collectively can loot the country. So to get rid of this, you need a presidential system. And in a presidential system, you will vote for a particular person to become the president and not depend on a parliament to elect him. Now, of course, people will say that if you elect directly the president and separately, independently, you elect the parliament, the two may not get along. Like we have in the United States, the president could be from one party and the Senate and Congress could be from a different party. But then it's no worse. If you have a fragmented parliament, you have a fragmented parliament in any case. At least the government is stable. At least the government gets a 4-year, 5-year term. They don't have to, every time making a decision, look around and get everybody on board. Because right now, the management of the government, of either coalition, it takes so much energy to build consensus within the coalition to make sure that somebody won't leave you. And they've always got a gun on your head that if you don't do what they've asked you to do, they're going to leave you and your government will collapse. So I think the strong presidential system will hold the Rashtra together. And then this kind of a government can be very strong and take action and be very tough in defending the country against external threats. We have a lot of external threats. I have a book called Breaking India, which talks about the threats both externally and internally that could break India. Literally could break India. This has happened before in our history. If you look at where we were just 2,000 years ago, the Judaism, the Christianity and Islam weren't even born. And we were a huge nation from Afghanistan, Pakistan, all the way through Bangladesh, Myanmar, Thailand, all the way to Cambodia and Bali. If you look at that distance, it's 3 times the current width of India. And if you look from Sri Lanka all the way to Tibet and Kazakhstan and all these places, you will see Shaivite temples, you will see Devi temples there, you will see these things in China, Japan. India was 5-6 times its current size. So we've been shrinking. And even after 1947's partition, we're still not safe and secure within the current boundary of India, where we cannot rule out the possibility of further partitions. So to fight these breaking India tendencies, which are exceedingly powerful, we need a strong government that can stand up to them and take action, because these breaking India tendencies are not only external threats, but internal decay, our own termites of corruption, corrupt people. And that is where the building block of the individual, the Adhyatmic process that Sri Sri has been doing for so many decades is very important, because you want the inner infrastructure which Sri Sri and others teach is the building block to build a nation which can then create the outer infrastructure. Thank you very much.